I was getting everything that I wanted,
Mm.
but it didn't make me happy. It didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything.
My friend, Brother Bernard Daos, was still pretty young when he achieved what most people only dream of: a successful career, his own place in New York, and financial security. But something was missing: the answer to a question he had been asking for most of his life. Growing up, he'd watched his Filipino immigrant father sacrifice everything to start over in America, yet somehow stay completely devoted to his faith. The question that never left Brother Bernard alone was why? Why was his dad's faith so strong? Today, we find out how that one simple question led to a change that transformed everything, not by giving up what he had, but by discovering what he'd been missing all along. I'm Aliu Garcia Pablo, and you're listening to Making Changes from INC Media Audio, a podcast about the changes we go through and the life lessons we learn along the way, but always with God by our side. Well, welcome, Brother Bernard, to Making Changes.
Sister Leo, thank you for having me. Here we are.
Here we are. You know, I not only have such great respect for you as a minister, but I'd like to say that through the years, we've had so many meaningful conversations that I am honored to call you as my friend as well. And through the years, you've given me so much insight, and I thought, we should share it with other people, everything that you've shared.
Thank you for that. And it's true that we've had a lot of meaningful
Mm-hmm.
conversations. And I think that hopefully through this conversation that others who are feeling the same or going through the same things that we've talked about can see that they're not alone and that God will make a way.
Yes. Growing up in the ministry myself, one of the questions I always ask ministers is I'm always so curious, how and why did you join the ministry? And I think I think that's one of the questions that kind of sparked so many conversations through the years with us. But before we get to that, we actually, your dad played a really important, I feel like all of our conversations always went back to your dad somehow, and you and I are both close with our dads. And so we had so much in common in that sense. But your dad came to America at a time when the church was still really just starting. So what were the things that you learned from your dad growing up in the 70s here in America or New York, right? Yeah.
So, growing up at first, I think a lot of things that I took for granted, that my dad was a doctor. We had the big house, the multi-car driveway. And it was just something that you always thought like, well, it's always been like this, right?
Mm.
And it only wasn't until I started to, try to make it out on my own, try to make it my life now, that I asked more of my dad, hey, Dad, how come you were able to do this? How come you were able to become a doctor? How come you were able to accomplish all these things, to get all these things?
Mm-hmm.
And he always reminded me that he said, you think it's me?
Mm.
One of the things that I always remember, and I hope this will resonate with some of our listeners, is he said, don't forget God, and God won't forget you.
Mm.
And so that led me to say, well, what do you mean don't forget God? I mean, I don't forget God. We've been going to church our whole life, and he just remembered, everything that you have comes from God. So don't hold back.
Mm.
And at first I didn't understand, I didn't know, but so I kept continuing to ask him about, what does he mean?
We should note that your dad came to America as an immigrant, minority, right, in the 70s.
Yes.
And at a time when it must have been tough to be Filipino in New York and trying to establish a career.
I think it would be even just tough for a young man to leave his family behind, to come to a foreign place, not knowing anybody, and then even your trade, because he was a doctor in the Philippines.
Mm.
But when he came to the new country, that you don't automatically have those certifications, those privileges. You're pretty much starting over again.
Right, and have to work three times as hard.
The barriers are just, and that's the thing again. I don't know that part of the story.
Mm.
It was always just, this is how our life was, until I started to ask my dad. And I said, I guess what sparked me to ask him, I said, why is your faith so strong?
Mm.
Why is it that even though you are a doctor, you are, here's a great story, which I'll never forget. He was sharing his faith, and one of the people he was inviting were like, okay, how are you? What do you do? And he said, well, for a living, I'm a doctor, but for eternal life, I serve God. So I want to share that with you.
Wow.
And to hear that is, what do you mean? Like, is being a doctor like nothing to you? But why was your faith, your duties, your promise to God so much more important than anything else?
What was it when you were seeing that part of him? What made you wonder and question? Like, why not just focus on the big stuff, like a career and, the faith stuff, all of that will probably come later.
And that's the great part of finally asking, my dad, like, why do you do what you do? And again, there were things that I saw, there are things that I experienced that he didn't have to tell me. Like, for example, being dedicated to the worship service, always helping out with the brethren, taking care of the house of worship. He never had to say it. He just did it. And so the example was already there. The only question I needed to answer for myself was why. And then when I asked and took the time, he really hammered home to me saying, why do you think I am where I am? Why do you think I have what I have? It all came from God. And then when he would tell me the story of that, he came from the Philippines by himself. And that really, he says to me, that was one of the darkest and hardest times of his life, to be without his family, to be, from a doctor to almost nothing.
When he moved to New York, what was his first job?
I believe he was just like cleaning up in the medical, just trying to crack the industry, just trying to get in. Wow. And, not having that network of people that you could say, hey, help me out. And
to be able to say, I'm a doctor in my country.
Yes, imagine that. And I think one of the things that he told me was what solidified, because in that situation, I can understand if someone would give up. Yeah. If someone say, I can't do this, I'm going back, because this is impossible. Because
it's more comfortable.
It's more comfortable. And why would I do this if this is everything that's ahead of me and I can't do it alone? That's when my dad made that firm decision, and he went to the local congregation in New York, which was just starting out.
This is in Long Island.
This is in what was now local of New York, but which was now known as the local congregation of Long Island City. And he took a duty in office. And while he was studying for his boards, he would guard the chapel late at night, so that way he would be there. And it was something that he instilled in me. He said, the more he did for God, the more sacrifice that he made, instead of pursuing his personal dreams, instead of thinking what was best for him, the more he did for God, the more God blessed him that he couldn't even imagine. I had mentioned earlier where I came into the story. But when I learned from my dad, and I'm actually mad at my sisters because I never knew from them either. I thought they started. They started. Yes, there's four of us, and I'm the third. And I thought we all started the same thing. But they remember when they first got to America too, and my dad was able to finally bring them over with my mom. And they lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, the four of them, in Queens. And then, they didn't have a car. They didn't have anything. And, even my mom now, she's starting out. And all of the different difficulties and all of those challenges that they went through. And that's one thing my dad never wanted me to misread or misunderstand. That he did that because he's good. He did that because he's smart. He did that because, if anything, he wanted me to know, he said he wanted me to know this happened because I tried to stay close to God. And as my son, all I can ask from you is to do the same.
Did your dad say, Bernard, I want you to be a minister?
Well,
or how did that come about? The calling part.
Here's the story, if I may. My dad actually is the son of a minister, and he wanted to be a minister, but he didn't realize it until he was already married. He has already children. He had already finished doctor, because that was what he thought he needed to do to get ahead, to get a better life for his family. So when he came to America, he actually, after becoming a deacon and becoming more active in the church, he signed up to be what's called a volunteer preacher. And so he was studying in the ministry. But then, of course, the church continued to progress. And once the church had its own uh, school for ministers or a college of evangelical ministry, that those who wanted to join the ministry or continue the ministry would have to go and get the formal training and study.
Mm.
So what
Did you feel pressured though that you're living out your dad's dream?
I at first I felt pressured because the story is that when he couldn't continue as a volunteer preacher, that's when they prayed for a son. And that's why 2 or 3 years later, when I was born,
Mm.
that was always what I heard, that, oh, you were offered to be a minister. Oh, you're going to be the minister. And growing up, it was pressure. It was something that, well, what if I don't know if I want to be a minister?
Right.
And so it was kind of always on the back burner. It was always kind of there. But the one thing I'm thankful for is my dad understood that pressure.
Mm.
And though he would encourage, he would, give me those slight hints, well, if you join the ministry, but he never forced.
Never
He
forced.
never said, you have to, I will, he's like, whatever your path takes you, just, I ask you, stay close to God, wherever you go.
Mm.
That's all I'm asking of you.
But where were you in your life before joining the ministry? What were you up to?
Well, and you see, that's why now that I knew that I was, or the story goes that I came to be because they wanted to offer a son to the ministry.
Right.
Which, good thing I wasn't born a girl. And, knowing that, I kind of tried to do as much as I could to delay that. That time, I was really trying to find out who I was.
Mm.
And again, as you mentioned, it's hard because being the first generation born in America, you've got that culture of the world around you.
Yes, and
saying,
it's strong.
hey, this is what you're supposed to be. This is what you're supposed to be like.
Not only that, you grew up as a son of a doctor. So some may call it a privileged life, right? It's comfortable. New York, you're a young man. Why would anyone want to give that up?
And that's the beauty about the path that now that I realized that God was taking me.
Mm.
Because I needed to see and know for myself that if I just rely on myself, if I just do what I want, this is only how far I can go. I'll give you an example, Sister Liu. I was very interested in accounting, in tax, in the business world.
Mm.
But for reasons one or another, I never got to finish my undergraduate degree. And even with that, I was still able to, get certain positions that if I worked hard, I really, gave it all I got, and I was able to progress to the point where I had a very, for my age, a very comfortable position in private equity.
Mm.
I was able to purchase my own home, even though I'm not married yet, I don't have a family yet.
You're living the American dream as a single guy in New York.
You know what's the amazing part? I was getting everything that I wanted, but it didn't make me happy. It didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything.
Tell me more.
Maybe especially in the days of social media, you could flex now, you could post, you could say everyone.
But I want to go back to that, Brother Bernard. You said it didn't make you happy. Like, what does that feel like? I mean, because from the outside, live in New York, you're a bachelor, you've got your own place, you got a great job. What does that look like and feel like that you just weren't happy?
I guess for everyone to understand, let me rephrase. Of course you were happy. Of course you had that, like that joy, but I didn't feel at peace.
Mm.
Because, when that's your mindset, when that's your goal, nothing is enough. There's always something that pays you more. There's always something that's newer, that's nicer, that I don't have that and I need to have that. So there was that constant struggle to say, I'm not enough.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet.
And what you have is never enough.
Yes. So it didn't matter what what God had given you, and that's why it's hard when you are looking around at what you don't have, you don't see what God has already given you. And that's what happened during that time. So even though I was at that point, there was it was there was a financial crisis in 2008.
2008.
The market tanked. People were losing jobs left and right.
Did you lose yours?
I didn't lose my job. I was actually even being considered to be promoted. And I remember my boss saying, he said to me, you keep doing what you're doing, in 5 years, you're going to be sitting in my seat. But I'm glad he said that, because when I visualized it, I said, 5 years from now, who am I going to be? What am I going to be doing? And I saw his life, very comfortable, very wealthy, but the stress, the no time for his family, I could see he wasn't happy. So I said to myself, well, I don't know if I want to be like
you. You don't want to be that guy.
And it was at that same time where, just like what happened to my dad, where at those dark moments, at crossroads where you don't know where to go, what to do, there's that rock of your faith that was always there. Just the same, again, my dad came from the Philippines. Now he's in New York. He doesn't know anybody knows it, but there's the church. He knows that, that's the congregation. That's the house of worship. I'm going to go there. And almost in that same path or that same feeling was that when all of this was going on, that call to the ministry, or that just interest in the ministry, that's when it hit me. And so, spring of 2009, I had already applied to the ministry. My boss even made an effort. He said, just stay until we find your replacement. We'll pay you this and do that. But then it would just, keep me from my path. And I remember what my dad said: whatever you do, just stay close to God. I didn't know what that path would take, and I grew up always wondering, what if? I know I would never be able to.
Living in regret.
Oh, that piece would just always escape me. And so, to take that leap of faith, I'm telling you, those sacrifices, those things that people say you give up, call them whatever you want, I wouldn't give any of them back to you. You see, when you look at the picture at 2009, where it started, you could say you gave up that, you gave up this, you gave up that. But now, if you look at the rest of the picture, if you look at God's whole work,
the plans laid out,
I couldn't even compare what God was waiting to give to me. So
16 years later now.
16 years later, or however many, whatever people will say, oh, you gave up. I say this: I didn't give up anything. The ministry has given me everything I've got. And again, it starts with that instruction from my dad that said, whatever you do, just stay close to God.
There was a conversation we had, and you said to me that one of the reasons why you also joined the ministry was you really wanted to understand, how did your parents have such deep faith? Like where you wanted a better understanding of the doctrines, and how did they become so spiritually rooted?
Well, I think growing up, and all of us can relate to this. We always sometimes maybe ask that question: why don't my parents get me?
Yes.
Why don't you see what I want and see why I'm asking for what I'm asking for? And then, but we could also ask that same question as children. What is it about my parents that I don't understand?
Right.
And the one thing that between my mother and father that I could always kind of just always point back to, can always relate to, was, how was your faith so strong? My parents will be the first ones to remind me that, like, again, everything we had, everything we enjoyed, where do you think it came from? The times when my sister at a very young age got an aneurysm. The doctor said that she wouldn't make it. The doctors were telling my dad, who's also a doctor, saying, you know what's right. So just make the decisions, because even if the small remote possibility that she makes it,
she won't be the same.
What are you hoping for? In short, they were saying to him. We drove, sometimes very early morning, sometimes late at night, to the house of worship, which was about an hour away, one way.
Because at this time, there weren't that many local congregations in New York yet.
Yes. But at least the thing we're thankful there was a house of worship to run to, no matter how far, no matter how many miles. And we would go and pray. And that was my dad's faith for teaching all of us that don't listen to what let's just ask God. And then whatever God answers, that's God's answer for us.
It's so powerful because your dad is a doctor, and just like what his colleagues said, you're a doctor, you know. But at that moment, he put aside all the medical knowledge he knew, and his faith was what he relied on versus science, what the medical profession was telling him.
And you see, the amazing thing is that's what the Bible's been teaching us. That when it's hope against hope, where's your hope? Are you hoping in what people, money, education, knowledge can do for you? Or do you want to hope in what God can do? And that's why, even though I was young, I was about maybe 6 or 7 years old.
And you remember that? That's
yes,
a core memory.
Because it was just such a very powerful, and also I remember asking my dad, why do we drive 1 hour and then drive 1 hour back? And then we're just going to pray for how many minutes? You know, to a young,
Says a young 6-year-old
young boy, it's
yeah.
like, that's a waste of time. Or
yeah.
I could do. But you see, again, and for all the parents who are listening there, and even the children, you know, the example that you leave your children by them seeing what you do just can be so much more powerful than any words, any, you know, even letter that you want to leave them behind. So show them who you are, show them your faith, and then show them why. And so thanks be to God, my sister who was and had the aneurysm, she is now a deaconess, and she's, you know, we're very close, and you know, I'm glad the doctors were wrong.
So you joined the ministry, and can I ask, before joining the ministry, like, how much did you know about the Bible, particularly?
That's a tough question. You know the Bible. You know, you growing up in the children's worship service, which is very essential when you think about it. All of those things that, you know, because you're being taught from a young age math, so you don't forget 1 + 1 = 2.
True.
But that's why it's so important for you to also have that spiritual training, because you won't forget that there's only one true God. There's no Trinity, even though the whole world around you, that's what they believe.
What
you're like,
saying.
but I've been taught this is what the Bible says. So maybe I couldn't point to chapter and verse, but thankfully through the children's worship service, that foundation, that basis was there.
So when you started studying, though, do you remember one of the first, you know, maybe Bible history classes you learned, or, you know, a specific time you really, I get it now. This is why my dad, my mom have such deep faith.
Growing up in America, growing as a first generation, you know, not even knowing the Philippines, or, you know, not knowing deeply that history, I didn't really fully grasp the wonderful fulfillment of God's prophecy. And then that's why when I joined the ministry, and you know, what was great was my dad would come, and then he would kind of show me and bring me to places and he could personally relate, and said, I remember when the messenger, Brother Felix Manalo, used to stand here and greet the brethren as they left.
Wow.
It made it now like it's real.
It's real.
Yeah, it's so real. And it's just that even though the world is so big and we're so far away, never think that the church administration is not trying to be close to you, trying to remind us that we are headed to a place that only God can give us. And then that's why when those things happened, it didn't become textbooks. It didn't become, okay, let me pass this exams. It became now that, again, I came in at a later chapter. I want to know now how this story begins.
You're going backwards, actually, right?
You have to.
Yeah. Well, would you say that going to the Philippines and joining the ministry was the biggest change you've made in your life up to that point?
I would say that it is the change that I am so grateful and thankful to God for,
Mm.
because I couldn't even imagine what my life would be if God didn't give that mercy to me. I couldn't imagine where I would be, what my life would be like. Because, in the ministry, there are tough days, there are difficult days, but there's never a day that I don't thank God for.
Mm.
There's never a day that I say, I can't do this. I don't want to. And that's one thing we try to share with the brethren, because we know they're going through days that, you get sad, you get hurt, you get even depressed even. But as long as you have God in your life, let that go. Each day is worth it. Just let the day finish out. God has blessings for you. And that's why I really can't even imagine. And so when you say it's the biggest change, I kind of want to think of it. It's the only change that I could think of. So
With any change, it starts with discomfort at first, right?
yes.
Because it's new, it's different. But when you made that change to go to the Philippines and study in the ministry, do you remember at what point during this new chapter in your life that you said this was the right decision?
I can't narrow it down to one point where I said,
Mm.
okay, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one time when I remember, saying to my mother, because again, I was back in the U.S. to visit, and it was a break. And then, she and I were shopping for, she's like, what do you need? What don't you have there that we can get here? So that way, when you go back. And I said, yeah, I think I need this for when I go home. And she said, what do you mean go home? You are home.
You are home in New York.
And I said, no, Mom, when I go to my home.
Oh.
And I know that hurt her, but I think that deepened what we understood about each other, was that, as parents, we can build this life for our children and this and that. But when they find their home, that's their peace, and that's why I go back to what my dad said: wherever you go, if it's not your home, just stay close to God.
Mm.
And so I think, there were many moments where I knew that, I don't want to say I knew that this was the right decision, but like every day you felt it. And every day that feeling got stronger.
While you were studying, you got a phone call one day and you found out that your dad had a heart attack. And your initial reaction was, I got to get home. I got to get home, be with my dad. What was your dad's reaction? What did he tell you? Want an easier way to listen to Making Changes? Check us out on Spotify. When you listen on Spotify, you get every episode in one convenient place. Plus, you can download them for offline listening. Perfect for your commute, your workout, or those quiet moments when you need to hear something meaningful. Spotify makes it super simple to pick up right where you left off. Create your own playlists with your favorite episodes and discover new stories that could change your perspective, your day, or maybe even your life. Make listening easier. Find Making Changes on Spotify today and never miss the story that might be exactly what you needed to hear. Now back to my conversation with Brother Bernard.
That was a really tough experience, because when I got that phone call that my dad had a heart attack and needed a quintuple, so 5 bypass.
Oh, it wasn't just
It was something. This was
surgery
something
that's
serious.
complicated. Yes.
But thanks be to God, I was able to speak to him. I said, "Hey, Dad, okay, I'm going to ask for, if I can come there and just be with you and see you." And of course, that's just anything, if we're not going to see each other, if this is it, let's give me one last moment. Is that too much to ask for a son? But his answer to me was, what are you going to do when you get here? Can you even add 1 second to my life? So he said, if you really want to help me, stay where you are. Keep your promise to God, and God will keep his promise to all of us.
Mm.
And so me and my brother, who was also studying the Philippines at that moment, we we instinctively just ran to each other, and we went right to the templo. We went right to the house of worship, and we prayed, just as we had done many years before with my sister, when my mother's car accident, when any time there was that insurmountable problem facing our family, we did what our parents taught us to do. And thanks be to God, our prayer was answered. And my prayer that day was, I just want my dad to see the fruit, the result of his prayer of having a son to join the ministry. And God gave me so much more. My dad was able to recover. He was able to be the performing head deacon when the local congregation of Belmore was offered, and he was in the tribuna with the executive minister. He was able to see my graduation, my ordination, my wedding, and even the birth of his first grandson. So I asked God for one thing, and God gave so much more.
How did joining the ministry change you, Brother Bernard?
The ministry, and for all of the church officers out there, that dedication, that decision to serve God is really such a great blessing if you look at it the right way. Because again, people will see the sacrifices. People will see what you have to give up, what you have to deny, what you can't do anymore that you used to do. Whereas once you understand what it means to serve God, then you can fully see that that's everything you ever wanted. And, God is the one who even says, he says, just test me in this. Try me and see if I do not open up the windows of heaven and pour out so much blessings that you can't even count. And that's why in joining the ministry, what's the blessing that is being taught to us through the church administration is that you can't be at a loss if you dedicate your life, your efforts, your everything to serving God. And God says in the Bible, Hebrews 6:10, he says, I remember your love for me. But that love for God is by how you helped his people and continue to help them. And you see, the one thing that I'm very thankful about the ministry is because it's a gift that God gives so that we can help others, so that we can help others to know God, others to keep their faith and trust in God, and for all of us to really get ready for what God has in store, and no one should be left behind. So the ministry is really a gift from God that just keeps on giving.
The ministry changed you in profound ways. And now that as a minister of the gospel, you're also helping others make changes in their lives, in finding the truth and finding God. What does that feel like? When you see the spark, when you see the light bulb turn on in someone's eyes, when they realize Christ is not God, everything I've learned growing up is not true. What does that feel like to know that you're helping change people's lives?
That's one of the great blessings that comes with serving God by serving others, is that your goal is no longer for what you feel. Your goal is no longer for what you will accomplish. But if you can help someone to just have that stronger connection with God, to have that deeper understanding of what God wants, and then see that affect or make changes in their lives, it only strengthens your faith even more. When it comes to the ministry, here is something that now in my life, the more I can give, the more I can do, the more I can offer, the more that, I just received from God that I didn't even ask for.
Mm.
I'll give you the example, as you referred earlier. When it was just me, when I was doing it for myself, I couldn't even pass my undergrad degree. You know, there were small steps of success, but they were always. And then now that being called to the ministry and being also used to help in various tasks, through the grace and mercy of God, once I received the approval of the church administration to continue my studies, thanks be to God, I was able to get my bachelor's degree. I was able to get my master's degree. I was able to pass the CPA exams. And after that, I was also blessed to be allowed to study law school and to graduate from law school and then pass the California bar exam.
All this we should say, all this in a span of just a few years.
But the thing that I need you to understand, and for everyone listening to understand, is could I have done this if I didn't give myself to God? Because why couldn't I do it before? But that's what God is always reminding us. God is always telling us that try Him.
Test Him.
Test Him.
See how good He is.
Yeah. Just make that sacrifice and see if He will not bless you more than you can even imagine. So to go back to your earlier question, what if I didn't make that change to go closer to God? I hope I never have to answer that question.
When you were talking about it and just the impact of, you can't imagine your life without the ministry. I saw in your eyes it's like something just flickered in your eyes. And as I was watching you get pretty emotional about that, I wondered, what was the thought? What was the image that popped in your mind that really just moved you?
There's just so much that, again, if you look at the world around you, you'll always see what you don't have. You'll always see what others have that you don't. But then if you just look at what God is giving you, and then knowing that it came from God, you will ask this question, what else do I need? Because, that's why it's important in life to always be thankful to the people you love that are around you, thankful to the people that are that help you in your life, but most of all, thankful to God. Because remember this, if you're not thankful, then you're taking it for granted. And things that are taken for granted will be things that are taken away from you.
Can you say that one more time, but slower? Because that's profound.
How did I say that?
You said it's important to be thankful.
It's important to be thankful. It could be the worst day, it could be the worst year, it could be the most difficult, time of your life. But as long as you have God, you have hope. And that's why when whatever you have, whatever God has given you, be thankful for that. Because if you're not thankful, then you're taking it for granted. And things taken for granted are things that will be taken away from you. Yeah. So treasure everything.
As a minister, I'm sure you come across lots of people who, when they're first introduced to the church, you could see that they're lost. You could see that they feel hopeless. What does that look like to meet someone looking like they don't know who they are, they don't know where to go, they don't know their purpose? And by the time you get to baptism day, like a different person. What does that feel like?
When we first meet a prospective Bible student, or when we first meet someone who has just even wants to learn more about the Church of Christ, I always have to control myself because I want to finish the story on day one.
Day one.
Because that's the excitement that as a minister, you'll have saying, I know where this is headed. I know where this is going.
I'm excited for you.
I'm excited for you because I believe that this is the best thing for us. Yeah. But of course, just like any journey, you're going to have to take them on that path.
Hills and valleys.
And that's where we ask God for the blessing. Because, when it comes to people relationships in our life, and we need to applies to all our relationships, is we don't know the other side 100%.
Right.
We
You don't
don't
know
know
their
their
full story yet.
fears. We don't know their aspirations. We don't know their. But if we're able to help them to understand that all of those things, whatever makes you scared, whatever makes you happy, whatever makes you, all of those things will be solved by you having your relationship with God. That is what's rewarding, I guess you can say, for us ministers, because when we see and we teach, first of all, about the dedication, being to be a servant of God means you need to worship God. You can't worship God just because, I'm free today, or there's no sports game on, or it's not just because you can or you're free. It's not an inconvenience. You worship God because you want to be close to God. So to see those Bible students, when I first, informed them that, in the Church of Christ, we're so dedicated to worship service, we go twice a week. And I remember some of my Bible students, their face like, no, not
Right.
me.
Not that most of them only go 3 times a year, if even, right?
And then to see them when you're in the worship service officiating, and they're not only in the worship service, but they're early, they're sitting in, they're already praying to God. That is, because you see, the thing is that as a minister, and about us sharing our faith and teaching people what God's words really are, for them to know and love and understand, is that will always outlive us. That is not something that I did or that I gave them. I was just God's instrument, thanks be to God. But that's why, again, stay close to God. Don't forget God. He will not forget you. I remember something taught by the executive minister, Brother Eduardo Manalo. He mentioned that a member of the Church of Christ knows how to read what life is presenting. Whatever it is, could be a job, could be someone, a perspective to be your spouse, could be a decision to make of where to live or what to do. But a servant of God will always ask, wait, will this bring me closer to God, or will this bring me farther from God? Stay close to God.
That young Bernard Dowse that was on that flight, what was he hoping to become, and what were his hopes and dreams at that point?
I'd like to ask him too. Because now thinking back, I think when I was on that plane ride, all I was thinking of was, of course, your family, and are they going to be okay? And the things that I knew that I had to do or responsible for, like who's going to do that now? Who's going to take care? And, that's the thing that Apostle Paul is teaching us about life, especially in a life that's directed to go to be close to God. He says, I don't think of the things that are past. I don't think of the things that are behind me now. I run straight towards that goal. And that's why I would like to know what I was thinking back then. But I know now that once God shows you your purpose and your path, it is the greatest thing, the most blessed prayer you could ever ask for.
But could you have ever dreamed that in 16 years, not only would you be an ordained minister, being able to, help baptize souls, but that you would have gotten your bachelor's, master's, law degree, passed the bar? Would you have ever imagined this for Brother Bernard Dowse?
Well, forgive me for stealing this from someone wiser than me. But, the being able to become a lawyer or CPA, that's just what I do. But what I do for eternal life is I serve God. And my sincere prayer is that until this borrowed life will end, may I do that. And if it be God's will that I can instill that or teach that to my 2 young boys, then that's all I guess that's all I can ask for.
What is it that drives you to do more when really you've done so much more than most would expect? What is it that drives you to just keep giving more of yourself for God and for the church?
Well, that you have to remember, that's the promise. And that's why also for the young men who are thinking of joining the ministry, we don't promise that, you know, I promise to be this and that. Our promise is that we'll stay faithful to God, and we promise to do our best to be of help to the church administration. And so all of those milestones or achievements or whatever however we want to define them, those are just along the path to me. So it's not that, you know, you reach that mountain, you reach that pinnacle. It's that I just want to keep serving God. All of these things that will come along the way, they're tools. They're to help me to serve God more. Yeah. You know, one of the things that I'll remember about my dad too is our house, because there was only one local congregation in New York, was used as a place of worship. And for 17 years, my mother will probably get mad, I think it's more like 19 years. The worship service was held at first in our basement, and then we had to expand and, you know, use part of the first floor and all of it. And I remember talking to my dad, because when we finally had our own house of worship and we had the dedicated, beautiful house of worship. And I said, you see, Dad, this was because of all those sacrifices, and that your house was used as the place of worship. I thought he would be happy. I thought he would be like, yeah, you know, he was upset. And I was like, Dad, why are you mad? And he said, you know, looking back, we only offered our basement and first floor. I should have offered even more. Wow. And, you know, when you understand that deep meaning of everything comes from God. Nothing we have is ours. Nothing we have is because you're smart, because you were lucky, because it's either God wanted you to have it or not. And yeah, that's just keep giving to God. Get closer to God. And if you're close now, get even closer.
Get even closer. Before we started our interview, you said, this tie is from my dad. This is my dad's tie. Yes. And how appropriate that you're wearing it today, because almost every sentence you've said is a reference to your dad. But during the pandemic, you know, you lost your dad. Yes. And I remember telling you this because our News World team did a story on your family. And there was something that you said in that piece that today still stays with me. You know, because you had lost your dad, you had lost your brother-in-law, and then an uncle as well, all from COVID. And, you know, this was at the height of COVID, and New York was really hit hard. And there was something that you said, and you said, yes, people are sad for us because we lost my dad, but what you don't see are the years of blessings that God gave us. Can you expound on that a bit more?
When it comes to our life, remember that God is authoring a very beautiful story for all of us. But if you look at one part of the story, if you only focus on one period of your life, it's easy to see, especially that time of COVID. Wow, very difficult, very, you know, just the world was falling apart and everything was scared. They're scary, you know. But then I said, this is what my dad mentioned, when be thankful in everything. You see, I could be sad that my dad was taken away from me at that time, and that, you know, these circumstances didn't even get to say goodbye, didn't even get to have that moment to just, you know. But then when I think of what I have to be thankful for, what's really in front of me, not just what God has given me. My dad had that heart attack in 2012. You know, this is 8+ years later that maybe I wouldn't have had. And just to know that by understanding his story, understanding how God has answered miracles and prayers. Again, I came in the later part of his story. And then I saw how my dad was blessed by God, protected, guided, and helped him to make that change to come to a new country. Then to make that change to be even more dedicated to his duty to serving God. And then when you look at that whole big picture,
When you step back,
that life of filled of God's blessings, how could I not be thankful? And as much as it hurt me at that moment, I was more thankful that I know and understand
Mm.
what my dad lived his life for. So instead of me being sad about his life being taken away from mine, I was more thankful to see how God's blessings, all his life, are still going to me.
Mm.
And I pray, and I know he prayed too, that they will go to his grandchildren as well. So it was difficult. It was tough. Don't get me wrong. But that's why I'm thankful for the faith that God gave us. Because if we didn't have our faith, that's it. That's the end. There's nothing else to do, nothing to live for.
Hey, just wanted to share another story you might want to check out after this episode. Brother Bernard's story reminds me of Arabelle, who lost her dad unexpectedly when she was just 17. In the middle of grief and a world in lockdown, she discovered that the faith her father had passed down to her was exactly what she needed to keep going.
I miss his constant reminders. There was this one time he felt sick, and he told us, "When I'm gone, don't ever turn away from the church." Well, it hits different now that Dad isn't here anymore. But those are the reminders that kept us going.
You can watch Arabelle's powerful story after this episode. The link is in our show notes. And now, back to the conversation.
However,
you mentioned something that's really profound, and that it's important to look at the big picture. Why is it so important and almost crucial for our own mental health, for our own sanity, for our own peace, to be able to acknowledge the blessings and not just that one thing that's not going the way you want it to go?
That's what the Bible's actually there to teach us. One example, if we look at the story of Joseph.
Mhm.
Joseph was sold by his brothers
Yes.
into slavery. They wanted to kill him, actually.
Mhm.
So it should have been the end of story.
Mm.
But if you focus just on that and you just focus on that moment, it's how could this, how could this be something to be thankful for? But if Joseph wasn't sold by his brothers into slavery, and if he didn't go through all the things he went through, he wouldn't end up being, entrusted with leading in Egypt,
Mhm.
that he was able to be the one to actually save those same brothers who,
Who came begging later?
who
to
put him in that, who put him in that, in that
Yes,
position in the
yes.
first place.
Yes.
So you see, even the things that are at that time seem so bad, seem so negative, seem so painful. Remember this: nothing's impossible with God. God could take that same moment and turn it to be the greatest blessing that you never saw coming.
Mm.
That is what about making changes is.
Mm.
Make the change to go close to God, stay close to God. And that's why, Sister Aliu, is one profound Bible story that I will never forget, is if you remember the story of King Hezekiah.
Mm.
King Hezekiah was told by a prophet that
You're done.
at least to be that lucky,
Yeah.
that like, hey, put your affairs in order
Mm.
because this is it. Not everyone gets that chance. And if you really pay attention to the story of King Hezekiah, at that moment, because he was close to God, he turned and he prayed. But do you remember what he prayed for?
15 more years?
Well, see, he didn't ask.
Mm.
He wasn't specific. He just said one thing he asked God for. He said, remember how I served you.
Mm.
You see, for people at that point in our life, we might be this, like, you know what, God, if you give me this, I promise you I'll do this. You see, God, if you give me this chance, I will change and do this. Make that change now. So when that time comes in your life, you can say to God, God, remember who I am. Remember how I love to serve you. Remember how I love to be close to you. I don't mind the sacrifice. I'm not looking at the hard times. I just want you to be close to me. And then you could even ask too, and please, by how I serve you, also remember my family, because I know they're going to need you too.
You were worried about me making you cry. You're making me cry, Brother Vijay.
Well, you know, I think those tears are because through programs like this and through the experiences in our worship services and through our lives, if we will just look closely enough, we will see God's blessings all around us. Mm. And so grab those blessings. Don't let go of them. And don't let anyone or anything ever take them away from you either. Mm.
Well, in closing, I wanted to say that in preparation for this interview, I wanted to have a better, also deeper understanding of your dad, because I knew he was going to be a big part of our story. I came across this picture, and at first I thought, is that Austin? I'm like, no, that's Brother Bernard. How old were you in that photo?
I look to be about 10 or 12. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, you know, and what's amazing about these photos is, again, I don't remember that instant. Mm. I don't remember, you know, specific details. But what I will remember is that man who is carrying me on his shoulders, he left me something more than I could ever ask for. Mm. You know, some people will be considered blessed if they're left a trust fund, if they're left a big inheritance. But what that man left me was a relationship with God. And that's more that anyone can ask for.
You mentioned that you got more than just, him surviving the heart attack. He got to see you get ordained, get married, but also the birth of your eldest son.
My son is appropriately named Austin Gray. We wanted to use the two initials of his grandfathers. So A would be for Alfredo, my dad, and then G would be for his grandfather on my wife's side, Gregorio, who is also a minister. Mm-hmm. And that's why, even though that Austin Gray will be growing up in a much different world, in a much different place, with much different experiences that, we'll never able to understand, because again, every life story is different. But we hope, and I'm praying that the same lessons that were taught to me will be taught to my sons too.
Came across this photo in the same way your dad is there with Austin. You're doing the same with Austin and Brooklyn.
Yes, thanks be to God. And again, that's why the things that, oh wow.
Do you remember this photo?
I remember this photo, and I remember.
What comes to mind when you see that photo?
All the parents who are watching, and even all the children, is, the moments that you have with your parents, please treasure them, because, when those moments are not there anymore, you will give anything you can just to feel that moment again, just to see that, so while they're there, grab them. And it's okay to tell someone how much you love them.
What I love about that photo is the way that your dad was hugging and almost like protecting you and your brother Brother Fred was just, really holding on to you guys tightly. And I found a photo that was the same. The way you're holding your two sons and the way your dad is holding his two sons. What are the lessons? I know your dad's taught you, Brother Fred has taught you so many lessons, but what would be the biggest lesson in life that you'd like to pass on to your two boys? That you got from their grandfather?
For Austin Gray and Brooklyn James, wherever you go, stay close to God. Stay close to God. And that's why, again, I can't think about what I've given up. I can't think about what I sacrificed, because how could I compare it to what God has given me? Everything that I have is God's gift to me. And I'm thankful for that.
You mentioned earlier that your sons are growing up in a much different world than when you were their age living in New York. How does a parent raise kids in a world where things are easier, things are more comfortable? How can parents teach their kids about God and needing Him at a time when life is pretty comfortable, especially where we live here in the Bay Area? How does a parent do that?
Sharing those stories, sharing what you as now a parent, but you when you were their age went through, but you have to share in a way that they'll relate to it. If we make it just like, oh, you have it so much easier than me and I did this, now it's like we're just complaining. But if we could share with them and just show them and just say, I need you to know this, because that way, this comfortable life that you have right now, and I pray that you will always have that. But if it does become difficult, if it does become challenging, if it does make you feel like you're lost and you don't know which way to go, just know I went through that story too. And that's why I'm telling you, here's the answer. Here's the change you need to make. Stay close to God and we'll be fine.
You mentioned struggles, but why is struggle important for us to, like you said, stay close to God?
Because we have to understand that God gives us those challenges, those struggles to make us stronger. So that trust, that love you have, their faith in God, that is what's going to strengthen it. Because again, if we just look at the world around us, we'll be too focused on something that's not going to last. Why don't we rely on the one who's been there even before our story began? And that's what, know who you are. The world will tell you one thing or many things, but your relationship with God, your membership in the Church of Christ tells you who you are.
What would your advice be for those who are still looking for their purpose, those who are still looking for something meaningful in their life, but it's too scary to change?
Ask God. You see, everything that we need or we could ask for, it only comes from one. So ask God. And those changes that we need to make, they will be difficult. And you know what? Sometimes we don't even know the changes we're supposed to make. But the beauty is that if you will really ask God, like really say, God, if you're all I've got, you're all that I have, everything will be either taken away from me, will fade away, will be worthless one day. So just guide me where I need to go. And, the thing about your journey being closer to God is that there's so many things along the way that He's got plans. God says it. I know the plans I have for you. So He's not guessing. He's not like, well, maybe. He knows. Ask God. And then remember, those plans, he says, they're not to harm you. They're not to hurt you. They're to give you a bright future. So when you ask God and then God will show you a path, it's scary at first. But then remember, this is where God is guiding you. Don't be scared.
We're human. You know, fear makes its way into our minds, into our
Yes.
hearts, and we believe the fears.
But-
How can, as
But
children,
that will happen, you see, and that's why God is saying, fear not, don't be afraid. You see, because if you're going to go out about it by yourself, then there's every reason to be afraid. You don't know what's going to come your way. You don't know if you can handle it. You don't know how you're going to get stronger when you need to be strong. But when God says, I am with you, when God says, I will guide you, I will help you, I'll strengthen you, that's when you don't have anything to fear. There's a brand, a luxury brand now that their slogan is fear of God.
yes,
I'm so mad.
yes, taking God's name and
Well,
yeah,
not only definitely that taking God's name, but it's as if the fear of God could be something that is, monetized and something that someone can declare. But the true fear of God, the Bible teaches us that you listen to God. You have that holy fear of God, and that's who you are. That's who your children will see who you are. That's where your grandchildren will remember about you. And that is what will bring us to the holy city. So don't buy the sweatshirt. Make the real change.
We always end our interviews with all of our guests with quick rapid fire questions. Okay, so first thought comes to mind is what you'll answer. All right, being a New Yorker, Yankee versus Mets. Is it Yankees or Yankee? Is it Yankees?
The only answer I can say is who are the Mets?
I think we know.
Do they play baseball?
I think.
And I have some friends in New York who are going to know that would be my answer.
Yes. So a hardcore Yankees fan. Okay. So what did you want to be growing up?
What do I do?
What did you want to be what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid?
I think that was the I did want to be a baseball player, but I knew early on that wasn't going to happen because I got cut from JV baseball. So they told me early on.
Who looks more like your dad, Austin or Brooklyn?
Oh, good question. I think I would say Brooklyn. But I also sometimes see Austin. Can I say both?
You could say both, but based on this picture?
Yeah, who do you...
Oh my goodness, this is Austin all the way. No, really, when I first looked at it, I'm like, oh, why does this picture look so old? I'm like, oh, wait, that's not Austin.
No, it's true.
That is Austin right there.
There are
it's
times
a carbon
where
copy.
When I look at Austin,
Do you see you?
I hope he doesn't see me like crying or a tear, but I just see that I see that connection to my dad. So I do see that too, Paul.
Definitely. What's one thing you would say to someone thinking about joining the ministry?
What are you thinking about? What are you thinking about? Because again, don't look at joining the ministry as something that you have to just reach or it's not something that you can do. God will make you who you need to be. So just ask, what do I do next? What's the next step I need to take? And if that step is scary, if that step, you don't know if you could do it, go back to what we said earlier, ask God.
So simple.
So simple. God is making our life very simple. We make it complicated.
That is so true. This next one. How do you hope your sons would describe you as a dad?
One thing I'm thankful for is that all they'll ever know is that their dad was a minister. And that's why for those who are maybe having their first children or their children are still very young, I encourage you to become an officer so that when they grow up, they only know you as a deacon, a choir member, a deaconess, because again, that's who we really are by how we serve God. Add all the titles you want. Doctor, initials, add all those things. But that doesn't tell you who you are.
That's so
There will come a
true.
day where I'll forget your name and face, Sister Elio. But
I
I'll
mean,
remember how you served God.
but Brother Eduardo has said it in his worship services. There are those elderly brethren who may be suffering from dementia, but they don't forget what their duties are.
They don't.
They still put on their uniform. They may forget everyone else's names, but they don't forget how they served God and how they're serving God.
That's why it goes back to the change that we need to make. Making changes, make that change to be a better servant of God, because that's who you are. Everything else is just decoration. It's just things that God will give you along the way.
I'm really amazed that with how busy your dad was. Your dad was a doctor, had his own practice. He was a head deacon, and worship services were being done in your house. But he still made time to tell you stories. He still made time to give you advice. There are some who say, well, I'm an active officer and I don't really have time for my kids, but God knows, so God will make sure they're okay. But your dad knew his responsibility as well.
The one tip, I guess, or one advice I want to give is when you spend time with your children, don't make it seem as if you're spending time with your children. Makes it feel like that's what is supposed to be done. And so what I remember with my dad having that time is because, for example, when he was the district bookload president, and that was the whole East Coast at the time.
Northeastern Seaboard.
So Northeastern Seaboard, Friday night, we'd pack our, one overnight bag and start driving because we had to be there at 9 o'clock the next morning. And I just remember being in the car with him. I was, I didn't need to go. I could have stayed home, watched Saturday morning cartoons. Yeah, maybe now I think about that. But that, me being with him to fulfill his duty wasn't like he was taking away anything from me. To him, that was him instilling in me and time with God doesn't have to be time away from your family. Time with God and your family. What else can you ask for?
Yeah.
So
how do you, because you are such a hard worker, Brother Bernard. We see you here all the time on weekends in the evenings. So how do you make time for your two boys, for your wife, for your family?
I'm humbled that that's your assessment, but all it is again, who are we? And we're serving God, and when you serve God, He said, "I'll open up the doors, the windows of blessings." God gives you moments, experiences that, you can't plan, you can't expect, but when they happen, don't take them for granted. Be thankful because God will make them happen.
You made a good point with your dad, that it wasn't about spending money and doing these big things.
All your life is the sum total of all the decisions you make. What to eat, what to wear, add those things up. That's your life. So that's why when you take all of those moments and then you include your family. So there are things that, like even simple decisions like, okay, grocery shopping, or let's not think of them as chores. Think of them as moments to, okay, let's have this time together. We have something else to accomplish, but this is our goal is to be together. So add those moments with the moments like when you're in the house of worship or you're going to a church activity, that take those moments to also be, and then when you add those up, that's the amazing part, because the sum total of those moments is just, it's so much greater than, that one moment, maybe, if you looked at it. But so that's why, remember who we are.
Lastly, fill in the blank.
Okay.
Change is
exciting.
Tell me more.
At first, change is scary because we are, we're creatures of comfort. We want that comfortability. But when change comes, it means that you recognize two things. It means that, one, you recognize I could be better. This is not the best me that I can be. And when change is with your goal of staying closer to God, then the direction is in the right direction. So that's why change is exciting.
Mm. Well, Brother Bernard, this was an amazing conversation and even better than all those ones we would have in your office. But there's so many nuggets of wisdom that you shared that isn't just about, growing up in the church, but also in the ministry, being a minister and being a parent and a dad and a son. And I just want to thank you for making the time and for sharing Brother Fred's lessons to you, and now the whole world gets to benefit from them as well.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving us all of your guests this opportunity, because when we share a little bit, just even a little bit of who we are, but it's the same thing that we all understand, that wow, we've shared that ever since
Mhm.
we had that same faith, when we had that calling in the Church of Christ, then what we're sharing with each other just gets stronger and stronger. What else can we ask for? So thank you for having me today.
I hope it's okay, because I'll still go to your office and we'll keep chatting and having more conversations in the future.
Okay, but is there gonna be...
Wherever you go, stay close to God. Those were the words Brother Bernard heard countless times from his dad, and it's the message he's passing on to his sons as well as all of us. Brother Bernard's journey to joining the ministry shows us that sometimes the greatest changes happen when we stop to understand the why behind what we do, why we're here, and the true purpose God gives us. If Brother Bernard's story resonates with you, or if you know anyone who has ever felt that feeling of getting everything but still feeling empty, share this episode. Sometimes we need someone to tell us that sacrificing for our true purpose doesn't mean we're at a loss. The truth is, it can be the complete opposite. Don't forget to subscribe to Making Changes wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, you don't have to choose between success and significance. Sometimes they're the same thing, just seen from different angles. Thanks for listening, and may your change uplift you.